Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going over ALG's first entrance into the AK trigger market. So it's the AKT, appropriately named. And this one here was, I believe, released at SHOT Show, or at least announced at SHOT Show of this year. And it's already out at market. So if you're watching this video, it is available for purchase, maybe back order, but it is available and it's out there. So this one here comes in at a very reasonable price and promises to bring some of the trigger geometry that ALG is known for. For those of you guys that don't know, Geissele is their parent company. So some of that technology, some of that R&D to the AK market. So let's check it out, get a close look at it and see some of the details and just how it performs. When you take the trigger out of the package, this is what you're going to get. You get everything here with the exception of the hammer spring. That's from my rifle that I used it in, so you don't get that spring. If you need one, you certainly can purchase them online. They're relatively cheap, but most of you guys are going to be replacing whatever's already in your gun, so you can just use that hammer spring and you'll be just fine. But you do get the hammer, disconnector, spring, and the trigger here, which has the lightning bow cut on there. A lot of people like that lightning bow angle. Really, for me, I haven't really noticed much of a difference. It feels good, though, for what it's worth. You also get this little roll pin here, and what that's for is to actually fit it if your gun needs it. Now, I tested this first in a DDI AK, the DDI stamped AK, and it did not need it, but I wanted to find a rifle that I owned that needed it, just so I could see how it worked and do the fitting and all that, so I could talk about it somewhat intelligently here. So my 104 UR did need it. So the reason that it needed it is that the safety was actually in the on position, so my safety was up, the gun could actually still fire. So you needed to add this amount of space to get it to not fire. So basically, if the safety was in the up position, it was just off it, just like that. Now, when I initially put it in, I put it in probably a hair too long, maybe like 1/10 of a millimeter too long. And some folks were out there shooting it, trying my rifle out, and twice it failed to reset. So I took it home and filed about 1/10 of a millimeter thereabouts off of there, just a few swipes of the file, and it has had 0 issues since. So you may need to fit it, but from everything I've read on the internet, it seems like about 3/4 of the guns out there, or maybe even more, don't need any fitting at all and don't need the roll pin at all. So most of you guys out there will probably leave this off on the side, but just be aware that because of the way AKs are, with so many different variants out there with so many different dimensions, you may need it. So if you do, that's how it works, and you're just gonna put it in and fit it. There's very clear directions in the instructions, but you're just gonna fit it to your safety to make sure that it works just fine, and it will actually not fire when the gun is in the safe position. So to install it, it's pretty simple. We're gonna show you that next, but we're gonna give you a good look at the geometry here of the trigger parts and the finish. You'll note the finish here is a mag phosphate finish. I believe they're coming out with either a nickel boron or nickel Teflon version of this in the future. It's not out yet, at least as of when I'm doing this video, but that should slick it up a little bit more. But the trigger pull is really nice, which you're about to see here in a second. So we'll show you how to install it and get into that. We've got the gun in a makeshift rig here with some ammo boxes, and we're going to show you how to install it, at least attempt to here. So what we're going to do here is take these 3 pieces. You're going to take your trigger and your disconnector, and then your disconnector spring here. And you can see there's a little hole in the disconnector. So what you're going to do is put that spring in there. My camera may go in and out of focus here. Sorry about that. It's because we're working really close to it. And there's a little hole I should show you here in the trigger. You can see that little indent, and that's where the bottom of the spring is going to go. And we're going to put those in there. And now you can see when the trigger pin goes through there, this disconnector spring is going to have a little bit of play in it, and that's the way it should be. So we're going to put it down in the rifle and get it all lined up, if we can do that without banging on the camera. And there we go. So at this point, we're going to want to put our trigger pin in. Let me slide these boxes out of the way. And one thing you're going to note there is when you do this, you're probably going to have to push down on your disconnector a little bit while you're actually pushing the pin in. which I'm doing right now, and we're going to have to line it up and push it through to the other side. And that's what it looks like when it's in. Your trigger should be able to move freely just like this, and your disconnector should stay in there. So that's when that piece is in correctly. That's what it looks like. Next, we'll put in our hammer, and as you can see here, we have these springs rubber banded down. I do recommend that. Sometimes you can get hit with them, and it's kind of annoying, so we'll try to avoid that. And you kind of just have to wiggle this one in. It's going to fit a little different in each rifle. If you have a milled rifle, it tends to be a little bit easier, but what you're going to do is line it up with the holes for your hammer pin. Kind of get it lined up there. Now we're going to try to put our hammer pin in there and move that out of the way. And put it in through the side. You're always going to want to start with these pins, guys, for those of you guys new to this, on the left side of the receiver and push them through to the right, from the shooter's perspective, that is. And get it all lined up. Let me see. It's hard to do on camera. And we're just going to make sure it goes all the way through and sits flush. Hold on. There we go. When your trigger pins are all the way through, they should sit flush or stick out a little like they do here. It just depends a little bit on the rifle. Now, if you guys use the paper clip retainers, by all means put that in. We're going to use the Tapco one here. It's really worth the money in my opinion. They work well, and it's just, I hate the hassle of those stupid paper clips. So I'm going to slide it in place, line it all up so that way we retain those pins. Now we can put in our safety lever. This one here happens to be the Krebs safety lever. We'll put a link for both the retainer and the safety down in the video description, so you guys can check that out if you're interested. But there you go. And that's what it looks like when it's installed. We're going to take these bands off now. Easier just to break it, I suppose. Put these down. And one thing that people mess up a lot of times on AK triggers, and you'll often hear reports of triggers not resetting and stuff like that, is that they don't put these springs on correctly. It's a very common problem when folks do it themselves. So we're going to show you how it looks here in just a second when you get it right. And that's what it's supposed to look like. Those springs should be touching, or covering, I should say, those two ledges on each side of the trigger itself. So that's what it should look like. And you can see here, it plays free. Now the hammer should set like it does there and release. And again, if you have to fit it, what you want to focus on is so that the safety here comes up, and when it's in the up position, I'm pulling the trigger now, slapping on it actually, and you can see that little piece. Oops, sorry if we can get an angle there. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. Let me see if I can adjust this firearm around so that way we can get the angle. Nope, I don't think we can, but what you're seeing there is what I already showed earlier on, where the actual safety itself was stopping that little roll pin from going up, preventing it from going into the fire position. Now we're going to get to the part that everybody wanted to see when they clicked on this video. What's the trigger pull like? So basically when we're ready to fire, it has a very crisp wall right at the beginning there, as you saw. So there's really almost no uptake. I'm trying to press it really slow and lightly. So basically right when you start out, that's when the trigger press begins. Breaks it very cleanly, very crisply. And you can see the reset here. Very short, very audible, very tactile. There's not a whole lot to complain about here. It's an excellent, excellent AK trigger. It's really reminiscent of what you'd see on a lot of ARs. So very ARs with good triggers. So what's the pull like? Let's check that out. So put it right in the middle here. And you can see that one there broke right at 2¼ pounds. We're going to set it again. It pretty consistently, obviously depending on where you actually measure it on the trigger, breaks right around 2 to 3 pounds. So it's light. That's going to be the big concern for some folks. Some folks don't like just how light that is. But again, Tapco triggers are very light as well. So 2½ pounds there. I'll do a third one for good measure. And right there, we're probably 2 3/4 pounds. So it's a light trigger, but it's very nice, very light, very crisp. And we're just going to compare it to a Tapco G2 real quick, because that probably is the most common AK trigger, at least in America anyway. And this is that DDI stamp gun I talked about earlier. That did not need the roll pin when it was installed on. It's 3¼ pounds. set it again. And again, right at 3 1/4 pounds. So that one's not much heavier, really. But one thing you're going to notice here when you watch this trigger pull is we have much more uptake, and then watch the length of the reset here. A good bit further. Now the Tapco trigger is good. I've never had a problem with it. I like it, but there's definitely a difference there. Compare that to this. I've looked up a few reviews of the trigger so far just to see if everyone's having the same experience that I am, i.e. pretty good overall, and everyone's reporting good things. The only negative we've seen out there, at least reported from some folks, is that they don't like the fact that they have to fit it to their gun. I don't personally see a problem with that, and like I mentioned earlier, the vast majority of you out there probably won't have to as well. It'll probably just be a drop-in product, and you won't even need that roll pin. So that's really the only complaint I've seen. It's really a huge improvement over other triggers out there on the market, in my opinion, and especially at the price point. The price point on this sucker, I think the MSRP is $49, so definitely not outrageous at all. If you look around at any of the other aftermarket triggers, it's really only going to be $10, $20 more at most. So very reasonable, and definitely has a nice light crisp break like you guys saw, short reset, and it's very easy to go fast on it. One thing I noticed, and people were asking me, is they said, can you bump fire it? Now I'm not a huge bump fire. I did try to bump fire it from the shoulder just to see if I could feather that trigger real quick, and I'm here to tell you, you absolutely can. So if that's something that you're into and you think it's a pro, look at it that way. If it's something that you're afraid of, well, you know, just working in trigger discipline, it's not really an issue at all. If you work that reset properly, you'll never do it. So that's pretty much it, guys. If you have any questions, anything we didn't cover here in the video, by all means, post below in the comments section. You can always post over at my Facebook page as always, but thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and hope to see you in the next video.